I have a story for you today out of Newfoundland, and if you've been following Newfoundland politics at all, you'll know that the premier just changed. It used to be one Liberal, now it's a new Liberal. Dwight Ball turned into Andrew Furey, and the staff composition that is now backing Andrew Furey in the Premier's office, well, I want to talk to you about that because it has caused a lot of concern. It has outlined exactly how closely linked the CBC is to Liberal governments. There are three individuals that I want to talk to you about today, but one of them raises more questions than the rest. The three are Fred Hutton, Megan McCabe, and Melissa Royal, Critch. Now, if you take a look at their LinkedIns right here, can you see what they all have in common? Well, for the first two, Fred Hutton and Megan McCabe, well, you can see quite obviously they were leading CBC journalists in the field before a Liberal government scooped them up to manage their communications. Who better to send talking points to Rosemary Barton than former journalists who worked for Rosemary Barton themselves? Well, frankly, if that's your goal, if your goal is making sure that your government and the CBC are as closely linked as possible, well, that's the way to do it. But there's one here that sort of stands out. Why would Melissa Royal, Critch, be hired by Andrew Furey? Well, that's a good question. She's a lawyer, and other than that, I wasn't really sure of any reason why she would be hired in such a political position. But then I noticed a name, Critch. Where have you heard that before? Well, it's actually the name of the CBC's leading comedian, and I use the term comedian very loosely there. Mark Critch, he's written books and he's been featured on a few CBC shows, most notably This Hour Has 22 Minutes. You probably don't know about it because, well, nobody really listens to it. Now, like I said, I wasn't really sure why they would be hiring Melissa Critch, so I was looking into her background, and what I noticed was she was brought along by Mark Critch, the CBC comedian-in-chief, to meetings and interviews with heads of government and politicians, most notably Justin Trudeau and Dwight Ball. Yeah, there she is in that photo, and here she is here, brushing his hair, getting his sort of hair and makeup done before he does a comedy skit with the former Premier of Newfoundland, the former Liberal Premier of Newfoundland. I thought that was a little strange. Sure, maybe you could pass off bringing your wife to a parade that Justin Trudeau was at, but why was Mark Critch's wife being brought along into what appears to be some sort of private meeting when they were filming a skit in what appears to be sort of a school music room? Why was she there? Could anyone have been there? Could I have been there? No, it appears that Mark Critch was bringing his wife along to CBC engagements with high-ranking members of government. In this case, it was a Liberal Premier, and how many more? We just don't know. But what we do know is after this meeting, well, Melissa Royal, Critch, secured the second top job in the Premier's office. She is now the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Premier of Newfoundland. Now, how did that happen? Well, I was curious. So I called Melissa to ask her.
Good afternoon, Melissa Royal, Critch speaking.
Hi, Melissa. How are you doing?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm great. My name's Keean. Congratulations on the new job, first off.
Oh, thank you so much.
No problem. So I had a quick question for you. I was wondering if your husband, Mark, had ever helped you set up...
Sorry, I didn't catch your full name.
Keean Bexte. I was wondering if you could tell me if your husband, Mark, had ever set up meetings with you and government members.
I'm sorry, I'm not interested in talking about this with you.
Are you concerned at all that your close ties with the Liberal government will influence how they are treated and how your husband's show and the broader CBC treats Liberals?
Okay, I'm going to talk to you later. I can, talk to you another point. I'm not going to talk to you about this right now.
There's lots of photos that show you and your husband meeting the Prime Minister and the former Premier of Newfoundland. Do you think that that had any role in getting you this job?
Okay, good afternoon.
So I also sent a follow-up email to Melissa Critch to see if she would add anything to what she told me on the phone, which, as you noticed, wasn't a lot. I also sent a similar email to CBC's Mark Critch to ask him if he had any comments on how his wife managed to secure that job. And actually, he responded. So in the interest of journalistic fairness, I'm going to publish his whole response right here. You can pause it and read the whole thing if you like, but I'm going to read to you some of the highlights. When I asked him why he was bringing his wife to private meetings with high-ranking politicians and heads of government, well, his response was this. After explaining how absolutely accomplished his wife is, of course, he says, "Melissa attended events with me because, as you know, we are married." Like that's some excuse for bringing your wife along to taxpayer-funded meetings with heads of government. Now that excuse might work for this parade photo with Justin Trudeau, where he presumably ambushed Justin Trudeau. Now actually, it probably wasn't that much of a surprise to Justin Trudeau. It was probably all scripted out beforehand because we know how close Liberal leaders are with the CBC. But there was Melissa Critch standing there combing her husband's hair in front of the Premier of Newfoundland in a semi-private location. Presumably, I couldn't have been there, you couldn't have been there, but this high-ranking CBC correspondent, well, his wife was allowed there. It's a little strange, don't you think? Now, this is networking, and networking is a funny thing. It's a powerful thing. It's how elites are able to put each other in positions of power. They know you're on their team. This is how it works. Melissa Critch was in a powerful position, and did combing her husband's hair get her the second top job in Newfoundland? Well, I don't know. There's no way to know for sure, but we do know that it is strange that someone was bringing their partner along with them to meet heads of government. That's certainly not something that I have ever done as a reporter. Now, why is this important? Why is this a concern to the taxpayer? Why is this a concern to Newfoundlanders? Why is this a concern to Canadians? Well, as you know, Mark Critch is supposedly a comedian, but when he does his job with the CBC, he focuses on conservatives to make them look stupid. That's his job, to make conservatives look as stupid and evil as possible. That's why he springs gay pride parades on Andrew Scheer, but when it comes to Justin Trudeau, it's just a funny handshake. But when it comes to Bill Morneau, it's just laying on his desk like they're frat brothers or something. It's not like there was a multi-billion-dollar budget there to talk about. It's not like there was wee scandals to talk about or anything that was really important for people to know about Bill Morneau. No, it was just joking with Bill. When it comes to Catherine McKenna, the then Minister of the Environment, now Minister of Infrastructure, he was busy drinking in a pub with her in Newfoundland. That was his stinging comedy.
But you know, I actually gave them some real advice. I said that if you actually say it louder, we've learned in the House of Commons, if you repeat it, if you say it louder, if that is your talking point, people will totally believe it, so just go it.
Now, to be fair, in that skit, it was Catherine McKenna who was really the comedian rather than the politician. But the point being here, how can anyone be sure, not that they could be in the first place, how can anyone be sure that Mark Critch's commentary, political commentary that he is paid for by you and I, that it is neutral? How can we be sure that he's not pulling jokes, particularly stinging ones to Justin Trudeau or the Premier of Newfoundland, because his wife's job depends on it? A six-figure salary depends on it. That is going to his household. I asked him that exact question in my email. How can Canadians expect you to be neutral in your taxpayer-funded political commentary when your household income relies on the success of Liberal governments? Well, he said, Melissa has her own career and I have mine. I'm not partisan. When it comes to Newfoundland premiers, Conservative Premier Danny Williams has appeared with me more than pretty much any other politician. It doesn't matter to me who is in the job. I think all politicians are equally ridiculous. Well, I would agree with you there, Mark, but the proof is in the pudding. You focus more times than not on conservatives to make them look silly or stupid, but when it comes to liberals, it's all about making them look funny and relatable. There is a serious problem with liberal governments hiring ex-CBC staffers. Now, there is a point I want to make here. When you leave government, when you're no longer a cabinet minister, when you no longer even work for a cabinet minister, what they call exempt staff, there's rules and regulations that apply to you. You're not allowed to, say, work for a lobbyist and then go lobby the government. Bill Morneau can't leave his role as Minister of Finance and now go work for we to lobby Justin Trudeau. That would be illegal, it would be unfair, there'd be a conflict of interest, and it would put you in a position of power where you really shouldn't have it. But for some reason, those rules don't exist for CBC staffers, people who are apparently on texting terms with the Liberal caucus, like Rosemary Barton is. You're allowed to quit working for the CBC and then move laterally into a Premier's office or even the Prime Minister's office. That puts you in an unfair situation. It gives an unfair advantage to Liberal governments who have then a direct line of communication to the state broadcaster, to feed talking points to feed stories to, as we know has happened in the past. We know that Justin Trudeau's government feeds the CBC lines so that they're the first to publish the story before anyone else. There's a problem there, and the law needs to change. As for Mark Critch and his wife, well, they're going to both be taking home six-figure salaries now, and we're not sure if we can trust either of them. For Rebel News, I'm Keean Bexte. Hey there, thanks for supporting Rebel News. If you want to go even further, you could go to helprebelnews.com. There you could pitch in a few bucks to make sure we're able to keep the lights on, providing you with stories that you're not going to find anywhere else.